"I'm sorry, sir, but your name is not on the guest list." The receptionist at Riverside Garden, one of the most expensive event venues in Miami, looked at me with a professional smile that barely concealed the embarrassment in her eyes. Behind her, through the elegant glass doors, I could see my sister's engagement party in full swing. Golden lights, lavish floral arrangements, impeccably dressed guests toasting with champagne that cost more per bottle than many people earn in a day. "There must be some mistake," I muttered, adjusting the Armani tie I had bought especially for the occasion. "I'm Diego, the bride's brother." The woman consulted her digital list again, frowning. "Here I have Isabella Rodriguez as the daughter of the hosts, but there is no Diego Rodriguez registered." Isabella. My younger sister, the golden princess of the family who, at 28, had never worked a day in her life, living comfortably off the money I transferred to her account every month. And there she was, radiant in her $15,000 wedding dress that I had paid for the week before, celebrating her engagement at a party that cost exactly $42,000. Money that came out of my business account after my parents called me in a panic, claiming that the groom's father had canceled his financial support at the last minute. "My name is Diego Rodriguez. I am 32 years old. I am a financial consultant specializing in high-risk investments, and I just found out that I was deliberately excluded from my own sister's engagement party. A party that I financed entirely." Through the glass, I recognized familiar faces. My cousin Roberto, whom I lent $8,000 last year for his veterinary clinic. My Aunt Carmen, whose credit card problems I had solved by transferring $12,000 directly to the bank. They were all there, dressed elegantly, enjoying a celebration paid for with my money, while I stood outside like an unwanted stranger. "Can I speak to the event organizer?" I asked, keeping my voice calm despite the storm brewing inside me. "One moment, please." She disappeared through a side door, leaving me alone in the marble foyer. Other guests passed me, being warmly welcomed and escorted inside. An elderly lady I didn't recognize commented to her companion, "What a dazzling party. The bride's parents must have saved for years for something so exquisite." Saved. The irony was almost comical. My parents, who claimed constant financial hardship, somehow managing to put together a $42,000 celebration. In truth, they had achieved nothing. I had. As always. My phone vibrated. A bank notification confirming that the last payment of $5,000 had been processed yesterday. The final amount my mother said was absolutely necessary to cover last-minute expenses for flowers and live music. "Diego, dear, you know how expensive these parties are. It's a once-in-a-lifetime event for Isabella. You understand, don't you? You always understand these things." Of course I understood. I always did. Ever since I achieved financial stability at the age of 25, I was the first to receive calls when emergencies arose. My parents' air conditioner broke down in the middle of the Miami summer. Isabella's car had engine trouble just when she was short on cash. The loan for my younger brother Carlos, to start that digital marketing company that went bankrupt in 6 months. The receptionist returned accompanied by a man in a dark suit who introduced himself as the event manager. "Mr. Rodriguez, I understand there is a mix-up with the guest list." "There is no mix-up," I replied, taking out my phone and showing him the receipt for the last transfer. "I financed this party. $42,000 transferred over the last 3 weeks." The manager looked uncomfortable. "Sir, our policy is very clear. We can only allow people who have been expressly authorized by the contractors to enter." "The contractors are my parents." "Yes, sir, but they were very specific with the list. Perhaps there has been a misunderstanding." Misunderstanding. The word echoed in my mind as I watched my family celebrating through the glass. Isabella was the center of attention, as always, telling a story that made everyone laugh. Carlos was near the bar, probably drinking the imported whiskey I had paid for. My parents circulated among the guests, accepting congratulations and hugs for a party they could never have afforded on their own. If you're following this story and have been through something similar, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to see how it all unfolded. I decided I needed to understand what was really going on. If they didn't want me at the party, I would find out why. And then I would do something I should have done a long time ago. But what I discovered in the next few hours about my own family would forever change my perspective on money, loyalty, and the true meaning of being valued by your family. I drove to a cafe across the street, where I had a perfect view of Riverside Garden. I needed to process what had just happened and watch my family from afar. Sitting by the window with a bitter coffee that perfectly matched my mood, I began to connect the dots of a pattern I had ignored for years. I opened my banking app and started reviewing the transfers from the last few months. $42,000 for Isabella's engagement. $15,000 for my parents' air conditioning emergency in July. $8,000 to help Carlos with the unexpected costs of moving into his new apartment. $12,000 so Isabella could get settled financially after breaking up with her ex-boyfriend. And that was just in the last 4 months. My phone rang. It was James, my best friend since college and the only person who truly knew my family situation. Diego, man, I got to the party an hour ago. Where are you? I didn't see you inside. My voice betrayed the bitterness I was trying to control. I'm outside, James. They won't let me in. Apparently, I'm not on the guest list. Silence on the other end of the line. That's impossible. You're her brother. That's what I thought. Man, wait. Let me find out what's going on. While James investigated inside, I continued to analyze my financial history. Over the past 8 years, since my consulting business took off, I had transferred $287,000 to my family. Nearly $300,000 in emergencies, investment opportunities, and special celebrations. I remembered my mother's call 3 weeks ago. Diego, honey, you know how nervous your father gets about money. The party costs are skyrocketing, and we don't want to disappoint the guests. You've always been our most responsible son, the only one we can trust with these things. Responsible. Trustworthy. Words I had interpreted as love, but now sounded like synonyms for convenient. James called back 20 minutes later, his voice heavy with indignation. Diego, you won't believe what I just heard. Tell me. I was standing near your parents' table when someone asked for you. Your mother said, and I quote, "We decided to make the party more intimate, just for people who are really part of our social circle." Diego is very focused on his work. He wouldn't feel comfortable in that kind of environment. My fist automatically clenched around the phone. The social environment I had financed. It gets worse, James continued. Isabella was laughing and said you wouldn't even notice the difference because you're always too busy to show up. That's a lie. I had canceled important meetings to be present at the last 3 family celebrations. My mother's 60th birthday. My cousin's son's graduation. My cousin Roberto's wedding, the same one I lent $8,000 to. And there's more, James continued. Carlos was telling a group how he convinced you to invest in his marketing company. He called you the Rodriguez Family Bank, and everyone laughed. Family Bank. The words hit me like a punch in the stomach. That was exactly what I was to them. Not a son, not a brother, a financial resource to be exploited and ignored when it suited them. Through the cafe window, I watched a group of guests step outside to smoke in the Riverside Garden area. I recognized my Uncle Fernando, whom I had lent $5,000 last year to cover a medical emergency, money that was never mentioned again. Next to him was my cousin Leticia, whom I had helped with the down payment on her house. Everyone was there. All the people I had helped financially over the years were celebrating with my family, while I, the one who had actually made the party possible, was excluded and humiliated. James, I need to ask you a favor. Whatever, man. Can you discreetly find out how much they said they spent on the party and who else contributed financially? I'll look into it. While I waited, I opened my laptop and started creating a detailed spreadsheet. Every transfer, every loan, every temporary help. Date, amount, recipient, justification given. The pattern that emerged was devastating. They systematically used me and then discarded me. My mother's phone call from last week came back to me with disturbing clarity. Diego, you're the only one who can help us with these final expenses. We know you understand the importance of family. Family. They used that word like a magic key that opened my wallet. But apparently, it didn't open the doors to the events I was financing. James called back 40 minutes later. I got the information. According to her mother, they've been saving for this party for years and have gotten some contributions from close relatives, but she didn't specify amounts or names. Saving. Contributions from close relatives. More lies to hide the fact that I had financed this $53,000 celebration practically on my own. I closed my laptop with a decision crystallized in my mind. For 8 years, I had allowed them to treat me like a walking ATM. I financed their lives, their dreams, their celebrations, and in return received crumbs of attention and respect. But now, for the first time, I had a clear view of how they really saw me. And if they wanted to treat me like a bank, maybe it was time to start acting like one. Banks have terms, conditions, and above all, consequences when contracts are broken. It was time to do a complete audit of my family account and decide if this relationship still offered a return on investment. I returned home with a determination I hadn't felt in years. My apartment on Betrayal Avenue, with its panoramic view of Biscayne Bay, suddenly seemed like a refuge from the toxicity I had normalized for so long. I turned on my main computer and began doing something I should have done a decade ago, a complete financial audit of the Rodriguez family. What I would discover in the next few hours about my family's true net worth would change not only my perspective on money and loyalty, but also on the real meaning of being valued by your loved ones. While James continued his discreet investigation inside the party, I began to uncover truths that would forever change my perception of my own family. I called David Chun, a private investigator I had worked with on corporate fraud cases for my clients. David, I need a personal favor. A complete financial investigation of 4 people. Family or business? He asked, his professional voice masking any curiosity. Technically family, but treat it as business. I gave David my parents' and siblings' details, explaining that I suspected discrepancies between what they told me about their financial situation and the reality. Within 24 hours, I would have a complete picture of who they really were in financial terms. My second call was to Amanda Rodriguez, my personal accountant, a brilliant woman who had transformed my tax situation from chaotic to exemplary in 3 years. Amanda, I need a delicate favor. Can you help me draft documents that formalize family loans as legitimate business transactions? Sure, but may I ask why? I explained the situation without going into emotional detail. Amanda had seen similar cases, families that successfully exploited their members financially until they were completely drained. Diego, it's more common than you think. I'll prepare retroactive loan agreements with standard commercial interest rates. Legally, you have the right to formalize these transactions and demand payment. While waiting for the results of the investigations, I decided to do my own field research. I called my cousin Sophia, my mother's sister's daughter, who had always been the official gossip center of the family. Diego, what an amazing party last night, wasn't it? Too bad you missed it. Scheduling problems, Sophia. What a shame. What was our aunt saying about the cost of the party? Oh, your mother was telling everyone how you kids got together to throw this wonderful party for Isabella. Each of you contributed your specialty, you with the practical stuff, Carlos with the social contacts, and Isabella with the planning. Practical. An elegant euphemism for picked up the entire bill. And people believed that? Of course. Everyone was impressed with the Rodriguez family's unity. In fact, your mother mentioned that they're planning a big family trip to Europe next year. She said it will be a special gift to celebrate Isabella's wedding. Family trip to Europe. It was the first time I had heard about it, but apparently it was already included in their future financial plans, or at least my wallet was. James called again with even more disturbing information. Diego, I got more details. His parents told several people that they saved for years for this party. His mother said, word for word, that it was a sacrifice, but that it was worth it to see her daughter happy. Saved. The lie was so blatant it was impressive. And there's more. I heard Isabella telling her friends how you've always been a very close-knit family financially, how you always help each other out in tough times. Help each other out. As if anyone in the family had ever offered me a penny back. James, I need to ask you for one more favor. Can you discreetly find out about other financial contributions? I want to know if anyone else in the family contributed to the party costs. 40 minutes later, James called me with the answer I had expected. No one else contributed a penny, Diego. His mother was very specific. She said they got family support to cover the costs, but when pressed for details, she quickly changed the subject. Family support. Singular. Me. On Tuesday, David's first report arrived, and the findings were more shocking than I had anticipated. My parents, who claimed to be in constant financial difficulty, actually had a net worth of approximately $460,000. Their house was paid off, they had 2 cars, a sizable savings account, and investments in stocks. Diego, not only are your parents not broke, they are financially comfortable, David explained over the phone. Their tax returns show that they have had enough income to cover all of their expenses in recent years without outside help. What about my siblings? Isabella had a combined household income of $110,000 a year with her fiancé. Carlos received a research grant of $45,000, in addition to consulting work that he did not report properly. I was financing people who did not need financing. For 8 years, I was systematically deceived by a family that orchestrated financial crises to keep me as their source of extra income. On Wednesday, Amanda brought the retroactive loan agreements. $287,457, plus 6% compound interest per year, the standard rate for unsecured personal loans. The total is $345,812, Amanda announced. Legally, you can demand full payment or establish a payment plan. $58,000 more in interest alone. The value of a luxury car they owed me just for the opportunity cost of the money. What if they refuse to pay? You can sue them. With all the documentation we have, it's a solid case. But I didn't just want my money back. I wanted them to understand exactly how they had treated me for almost a decade. I wanted them to face the consequences of their systematic manipulation. I wanted poetic justice. On Thursday, my mother called, just as I had predicted. Diego, dear, do you have a few minutes to talk about those bills I mentioned? Sure, Mom. But first, I wanted to ask you about the party. I heard it was wonderful. Oh, it was divine. Everyone commented on how well organized it was. We are so grateful for our children. I'm glad to hear it. What about those bills? Well, the credit card went a little crazy, and there are some outstanding bills from the party vendors. Nothing serious, but you know how your father gets nervous about these things. How much exactly? About $15,000. I know it's a little high, but you always understand these situations. $15,000. To cover expenses for a party I had already paid for in full. It was officially the last straw. Mom, I actually need to talk to you about something important. How about I come over on Saturday? We can talk about it calmly. That sounds wonderful. I'll bake that chocolate cake you like so much. After hanging up, I opened my laptop and began the final details of my plan. I printed out all the financial reports, organized the loan agreements into neat folders, and prepared a PowerPoint presentation that I would use on Saturday. The title of the first slide was simple: Family Financial Audit Results and Recommendations. I also prepared 3 sealed envelopes. Each contained a copy of each family member's specific loan agreements, along with a detailed payment schedule. Isabella owed me $68,000. Carlos owed me $75,000. My parents owed me the rest. But there was a 4th envelope. This one was addressed to the entire family. Inside was my letter of resignation as the family ATM, effective immediately. On Saturday morning, I drove to my parents' house in Coral Gables for the last time as the obedient, exploited son. When I left a few hours later, our family dynamic would be completely different. Or there would be no family dynamic at all. What they didn't know was that I had prepared 3 very specific options for them. And regardless of their choice, one thing was certain: the days of treating me like their personal bank were over. Forever. On Friday, I spent the entire day finalizing the details of my plan. I printed out all the financial reports, organized the loan agreements into neat folders, and prepared a PowerPoint presentation that I would use on Saturday. The title of the first slide was straightforward: Family Financial Audit, Results and Recommendations. I also prepared 4 sealed envelopes. 3 contained copies of each family member's specific loan agreements, along with detailed payment schedules. Isabella owed me $68,000. Carlos owed me $75,000. My parents owed me the rest. But there was a 4th envelope, addressed to the entire family. Inside was my letter of resignation as family ATM, effective immediately. As I organized the documents, I received an unexpected call from David Chun. Diego, I found something interesting during my investigation. Your parents took a trip to the Bahamas in July, 3 weeks after asking you for $12,000 for your father's urgent medical emergency. I pulled up the statement he had emailed me. 5-star hotels, expensive restaurants, luxury excursions. All paid for with a credit card the same week my mother was crying on the phone about not being able to pay the medical bills. There's more, David continued. Isabella went on a $15,000 shopping spree in Beverly Hills the same month she asked you for help with basic necessities. Louis Vuitton handbags, Christian Louboutin shoes, Tiffany jewelry. Each new discovery was like a stab in the back. Not only were they lying to me about emergencies, they were using my money to fund luxurious lifestyles I couldn't even afford for myself. What about Carlos? His brother bought $8,000 worth of video game equipment and electronics the same week he claimed he couldn't pay his rent. PlayStation 5, MacBook Pro, latest iPhone model. I hung up with crystal clarity about what my family really was, an organized gang of financial manipulators who had chosen me as their favorite victim. At 3 in the afternoon, my mother called again. Diego, honey, your father is very worried about these bills. Could you transfer about $5,000 today? It's to avoid credit card interest. You know how these things work. The audacity was impressive. Not even 24 hours after finding out I wasn't invited to the party I financed, she was asking for more money. Sure, Mom. But tell me, how was your honeymoon in the Bahamas in July? Silence on the other end of the line. I don't know what you're talking about, Diego. The trip you took 3 weeks after asking me for $12,000 for Dad's urgent medical expenses. That was a misunderstanding. Your father recovered faster than we expected, and the doctor suggested a change of scenery would be good for him. Change of scenery. At a 5-star resort in the Bahamas. How convenient. And Isabella? How did she manage to buy $15,000 worth of luxury goods in the same month she told me she was struggling to make ends meet? Another silence. Longer this time. Diego, you're being very investigative. This is none of your business. Actually, Mom, when it comes to money that came out of my account, it's very much my business. Look, we can talk about this on Saturday. Right now, I need that $5,000 to pay the bills. There won't be another $5,000, Mom. Not now, not ever. Diego. You can't talk to your mother like that. I can and I am. On Saturday, you'll understand exactly why. I hung up before she could respond. 20 minutes later, Isabella called. Her voice was filled with indignation. Diego, Mom told me you were very rude to her on the phone. What's this about not helping the family anymore? Isabella, do you really want to have this conversation? Yes, I do. Since when did you become so selfish? We've always been a close family, we've always helped each other. We always helped each other. I almost laughed. Tell me something, Isabella. When was the last time you helped me with anything? I always support you emotionally. Emotional support. What about financially? Diego, you know my situation is different from yours. His situation of shopping for $15,000 in Beverly Hills? This time the silence was absolute. How do you know about that? I know a lot of things, Isabella. Much more than you realize. Diego, you're scaring me. I'm not threatening you, I'm just opening your eyes. On Saturday, when we meet at our parents' house, you'll understand everything. What are you talking about? About the $287,000 I transferred to this family over the last 8 years. About the lies, the manipulation, how you treated me for almost a decade. Diego. If you're enjoying this story of disturbing family discoveries, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to see how this confrontation unfolded. Isabella, I'll see you on Saturday. And I suggest that you, Carlos, and our parents prepare for a very frank conversation about money, respect, and consequences. I hung up and went back to my final preparations. Amanda had finalized all the legal contracts. David sent the full investigation report. I had prepared 3 very specific options for my family to choose from. Option 1. Formally acknowledge that all transfers were loans, sign retroactive contracts, and establish a 5-year payment plan. Total, $345,812. Option 2. Be sued for civil fraud and systematic financial manipulation. Option 3. Cut off all financial ties forever, considering the $287,000 a final parting gift. But all options came with strict conditions. On Saturday morning, I loaded my car with a briefcase containing the future of the Rodriguez family. When I left my parents' house a few hours later, our family dynamic would be completely different. Or there would be no family dynamic at all. As I drove through the familiar streets of Coral Gables for the last time as the obedient and exploited son, one certainty pulsed through my mind. The days of being treated like a personal bank were over. Forever. What they didn't know was that I had documented not only their financial lies, but also every cruel word they had said about me during the party I had financed. And those recordings would be just the beginning of the presentation that would change everything. I arrived at my parents' house in Coral Gables at 2 in the afternoon, carrying an executive briefcase that contained the future of the Rodriguez family. My mother greeted me with a warm hug and a smile that I now recognized as purely transactional. "Diego, I'm so glad to see you, dear. Your father is in the living room," and I also called Isabella and Carlos. I thought it would be good for us all to talk about the family finances. Of course she had called my siblings. Probably to share the psychological pressure and ensure that I couldn't refuse to help with everyone present. I entered the room where the whole family was gathered. Isabella was on the sofa with her princess smile, Carlos was relaxed in the armchair as if he owned the place, and my father was reading the newspaper with his perpetually serious expression. It was the same setup as always. They were comfortable, and I had been summoned to solve problems. "Well, Diego's here," my mother announced. "We can talk about those matters I mentioned." I opened my briefcase and took out the main folder. "Actually, Mom, I'm the one who needs to talk to you about some important financial matters." My father put down the newspaper and frowned. "What kind of matters?" "Audit matters," I replied calmly, handing out copies of a 20-page document. I spent the week doing a detailed analysis of all financial transactions between this family and me over the last 8 years. Isabella took the document with disinterest, but her expression quickly changed when she saw the numbers on the first page. "Diego, what is this?" "A complete report of every loan, transfer and payment I've made to each of you since 2016. Carlos flipped through a few pages and turned pale. "Loans? You never said they were loans." "Interesting observation, Carlos. On page 12, you'll find a legal analysis of the difference between loans and gifts under federal law. All the transfers I made can be legally classified as loans, especially considering that you always promised to pay them back when the situation improved." My father finally gave it his full attention and adjusted his glasses to read better. $345,812. That can't be true. "It's absolutely correct, Dad. $287,457 in direct transfers, plus 6% compound interest per year, the standard market rate." My mother sat down heavily, still trying to process the information. "But Diego dear, these weren't. You always said it was to help the family." And I did help for 8 years. But this week I discovered some interesting things. I took the second set of documents out of my briefcase. David Chun, licensed private investigator, conducted an independent financial analysis on each of you. The room fell silent. "Dad, you and Mom have a net worth of $460,000. Your house is paid off, you have investments, solid savings accounts. Over the past 5 years, your annual household income has been sufficient to cover all expenses without outside assistance." My father opened his mouth to protest, but I continued. "Isabella, your combined household income is $110,000 a year. You're not struggling to make ends meet as you claimed. Your tax returns show consistent luxury spending." Isabella blushed. "Did you hire an investigator to spy on our family?" "I hired a professional to verify the information you provided when requesting financial assistance," I corrected. "And Carlos, your development consulting work generates about $30,000 a year that you don't report properly, in addition to your official salary." Carlos exploded. "That's invasion of privacy." "It's a credibility check," I replied calmly. "Something you should have done years ago." My mother found her voice, trying to adopt the maternal tone that always worked. "Diego, even if we have some resources, family is family. We'll always be here for you too." I laughed sincerely for the first time in days. "Mom, when was the last time any of you offered me help?" financial, emotional, or any kind. Silence. I'll tell you. Never. In 8 years, there hasn't been a single occasion when you've shown concern for my well-being, my problems, or my needs. I took out the third set of documents. These are screenshots from your social media accounts from the last 2 years. Isabella, you posted photos of dinners at expensive restaurants in the same weeks you called me asking for money for basic expenses. I showed them the printouts. Carlos, you bought $8,000 worth of video game equipment in the same month you claimed you couldn't pay the rent. Their faces were a mixture of shock, anger, and something I had never seen directed at me before, fear. And you, parents, took a trip to the Bahamas 3 weeks after asking me for $12,000 for my father's urgent medical expenses. My father tried to regain his authority. Diego, you're exaggerating. Those were coincidences. They weren't coincidences, I interrupted, pulling out another document. I hired a data analyst to trace temporal correlations. 93% of your requests for financial assistance occurred between 1 and 3 weeks before significant spending on luxuries or entertainment. The evidence was overwhelming, and everyone knew it. But the best part, I continued, was finding out about the engagement party. Everyone tensed up. I was told the party would cost $25,000. It actually cost $53,000. I paid $42,000, and you guys covered only $11,000, exactly the amount you asked me to borrow the following week. Isabella tried a different approach. Diego, you're being very cold. We're your family. Family? I asked, taking out my phone. I'm going to play back some conversations I recorded discreetly over the last few days. I pressed play on a recording of my cousin Sophia telling how my mother had lied about all the children contributing to the party. Then a recording of James describing the cruel comments they made about me during the celebration. And lastly, I said, connecting my phone to the TV, some photos from the engagement party. The images appeared on the screen. They were celebrating, laughing, toasting. In one photo, my mother was showing someone the pearl necklace I had bought her for Christmas, while saying something that made her laugh. James got the audio of this particular conversation, I explained, turning up the volume. My mother's voice came out of the speakers. Diego has always been our most generous son. Sure, he doesn't know much about social life, but he's very useful when we need practical things. Useful. The word echoed in the silent room. So this is the situation, I announced, returning to my briefcase. You have 2 options. I distributed the sealed envelopes I had prepared. Option 1, you formally acknowledge that all transfers were loans, sign these retroactive contracts, and establish a 5-year payment plan. Total, $345,812. My father opened his envelope, read it quickly, and turned pale. Diego, that's impossible. We can't pay that amount. Option 2, I continued, ignoring the protest. I sue you all for civil fraud and systematic financial manipulation. My lawyer assures me it's a solid case, especially with all the evidence I've gathered. Carlos stood up abruptly. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious in my life. Isabella tried to cry, her oldest strategy. Diego, please, you're destroying our family. I'm not destroying anything, Isabella. I'm just refusing to finance the destruction of my own dignity. I took the last envelope out of my briefcase. But there is a third option that you will like better. Everyone looked at me with desperate hope. You can accept that our financial relationship ends today, forever. Don't ever ask me for money again. Don't expect me to pay anything. Don't count on me to solve your financial problems. I paused to let them take it in. In return, I consider the $287,457 a final farewell gift. You keep the money, I keep my freedom. The relief on their faces was palpable, until I continued. But there are conditions. First, if any of you contact me to ask for money in the next 10 years, I will automatically activate option 2, sue for fraud. Second, if anyone spreads lies about me to other family members, I will sue for defamation. Third, I accept that you won't invite me to family events, but you will never again pretend that I'm welcome while you use my money to pay for them. I looked each of them in the eye. You have 48 hours to decide. I'll leave my answer in writing on Monday. I stood up, closed my briefcase, and headed for the door. Oh, and that $15,000 you wanted to cover the outstanding costs of the party? I found out there are no outstanding costs. What happened is that you spent the money I sent you on other things and now you need to cover the shortfall. At the door, I turned around one last time. For 8 years you treated me like a bank. Now you know how banks behave when they discover fraud. The door closed behind me, leaving them alone with the reality that his personal ATM had just become permanently inaccessible. But what happened in the next 48 hours would exceed even my most optimistic expectations of how this family would react when finally confronted with the consequences of years of systematic manipulation. Monday arrived with a clarity I hadn't experienced in years. I woke up without the familiar anxiety that had accompanied me for almost a decade, that constant feeling of waiting for the next emergency that would drain my bank account. At 9 in the morning, exactly 48 hours after my ultimatum, I received a call from Isabella. Her voice trembled with barely contained rage. "Diego, we've talked as a family and we've chosen the third option. But I want you to know that you are destroying relationships that can never be repaired." "Understood, Isabella. I'll formalize it in writing today. And another thing," she continued, showing her true colors, "don't be surprised if other family members find out how you're treating your own family. Actually, Isabella, feel free to tell them. But be sure to mention the $287,000 they owe me, and how I found out that they lied to me about their financial situation for 8 years. Silence. Then the sound of the phone being hung up abruptly. Carlos called an hour later, trying to appeal to nostalgia. My parents tried one last coordinated manipulation at the end of the day. Everyone agreed on the third option, but only to avoid legal consequences. Starting on Tuesday, I began receiving unexpected phone calls. First it was my cousin Rebecca, who had been at the engagement party. "Diego, I heard from Isabella about what happened. She's trying to paint you as the villain, but I was there. I saw how they talked about you, and I wanted to tell you that you did the right thing. It always seemed strange to me that you were never at family celebrations, but your gifts were always the most expensive." My uncle Fernando called to apologize and propose a payment schedule for the $5,000. Apparently, my cousin Sophia had spread details of the investigation, and several relatives were reconsidering their relationship with me. The most surprising revelation came from my Aunt Catherine, my mother's sister. "Diego, I need to tell you something. Your grandmother Elena left you a letter before she died. She asked me to give it to you when you woke up to reality, in her own words." My grandmother Elena had been the only person in the family who had always treated me with genuine respect. The letter revealed a bank account with $60,000 that she had saved specifically for when I freed myself from this dynamic. On Thursday, I received a totally unexpected call from the event organizer at Riverside Garden, offering me free services as a formal apology for the humiliation at the engagement party. On Friday, the final legal document arrived, the formalization of the end of my financial relationship with my family. Amanda had crafted an agreement that protected both sides. They got the money, and I got my freedom. But the biggest transformation was happening inside me. For the first time in years, I was making decisions based on what I wanted, not what my family needed. I started planning that trip to Europe I had always dreamed of. "Man, you look 10 years younger," James commented. "I feel reborn," I admitted. I had no idea how much weight I was carrying on my shoulders. 3 months later, I threw my own party at Riverside Garden, a gathering to thank the people who truly valued me. This time, I was genuinely surrounded by people who cared about me, not my wallet. My parents and siblings weren't invited, and for the first time, that exclusion was a conscious choice on my part. 6 months after my ultimatum, my life had improved beyond recognition. Financially, I had accelerated my retirement plans by 5 years. Emotionally, the constant anxiety had disappeared. Socially, I had discovered authentic relationships. From time to time, I heard news through relatives. My parents adjusted their lifestyle without my secret financial support. Isabella canceled her home renovation plans. Carlos finally got a real job. They survived and prospered in a more honest way. The most valuable lesson I learned was that true love is never conditional on financial resources. Healthy relationships are based on mutual respect, not usefulness. And sometimes, the greatest demonstration of self-love is walking away from people who only value us for what we can provide. Today, when someone asks me to borrow money, I have clear conversations about terms and expectations. Not because I've become cold, but because I've learned that honest relationships thrive on transparency, not manipulation. My wallet may be fuller, but my heart is infinitely lighter. And it's a change I would make again without hesitation. If this story has moved you in any way, if you recognize similar patterns in your own life, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share your own experiences in the comments. Remember, you are worth more than you can offer others. Your value is inherent, not transactional, and it's never too late to redefine relationships based on mutual respect.